I'd like to begin the first panel on business and innovation, and I'm going to introduce the panel moderator, Konstantinos Miliareses. Konstantinos?
Yes, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Dr. Kudras, and thank you everyone who's here today with us. They say that the only thing that's constant is change, and I think even the last believers would accept right now with what we're experiencing the last few months. And now more than ever, innovation is critical for business, not only to adapt and survive, but also to identify new opportunities. So I'm really happy that today we have with us three amazing speakers to share their thoughts, their backgrounds, and their insights from the industry. More specifically, ladies first, today with us we have Lydia Vradi. Lydia has gotten her bachelor from Law School of Athens in Greece, and then she obtained her master's degree in law from the Wharton School of University of Pennsylvania. She's an attorney at Pardalis Nohavicka office, leading the intellectual property as well as trademark and copyright, prosecution enforcement, as well as advice and strategy. Hello, Lydia.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Our second speaker is Mr. Demetri Papacostas. Mr. Papacostas pursued his MBA degree at the Lubin School of Business of Pace University, and he also has his PhD in finance from NYU Leonard Stern School of Business from the University of New York. For the last 11 years, he works at Bloomberg, where among other responsibilities, he runs the market specialist group across all asset classes of Americas as the head of corporate and commodity specialist. At the same time, he is a graduate and undergraduate professor at City University of New York, as well as an author with his latest book, Foreign Exchange, Options and Risk Management on Market Dynamics, Models and Human Behavior, to be available online. Hello, Mr. Papacostas.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the invitation, your kind invitation.
Of course. And our last speaker is Mr. Pyrovolakis. And actually, I met Mr. Pyrovolakis in this event exactly a year ago. He has a PhD in mathematical logic from MIT. And if I have to mention all of his titles, I think the 45 minutes would not be enough for the people that already know him, as he's like founder and CEO of Innovation Accelerator Foundation, to lecturer, investor, board member, director, and many more. He has been part of multiple entrepreneurship and innovation initiatives, and right now he focuses on fintech and cybersecurity. So, hello everyone.
Konstantinos, I am here. Sorry about that. As my MIT background would as my MIT background would suggest, I can't operate a phone. So, thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. Hello, Mr. Pyrovolakis. So, hello everyone. I know that I mentioned your titles, but do you want to tell us more about your story and your recent endeavors? And I think, Lydia, we can start with you if you want.
Sure. Hello again, everyone. My name is Lydia Vradi. I'm originally from Athens, Greece. I work for Pardalis and Nohavicka law firm. I've been there for about 3 years now. I focus my practice on intellectual property law, particularly trademarks and copyright and prosecution and enforcement. Our clients are across many different industries. Many are in the technology sphere, many startups. Also, we have many clients in the entertainment industry. And a little bit more about myself. So I started out originally working in Athens, Greece as an attorney. And back then I focused on financing and banking. I worked for a law firm that was focusing on that field. But eventually I realized that my passion was with intellectual property law. It was always an interest of mine. So that's how I ended up working as an intellectual property attorney. And I'm currently working with clients on a range of transactions involving intellectual property, mainly focusing on, as I said, trademark prosecution and strategy, as well as protection of intellectual property in the digital environment, which is something we will address more later. So that's just as an intro.
Mr. Papacostas, do you want to tell us more?
Of course. So just a clarification, especially in this age of intense scrutiny. I don't have my PhD from NYU. I started at NYU, but then we had our daughter, and she's my PhD. I had to kind of compromise, and maybe this is a good lesson for a lot of people. This importance and what's important in life and what priorities you choose will have to be altered and defined by circumstances. But my background, as you said, I run last 10 years I've been at Bloomberg. I run a group of market specialists. These are people that typically have, 15, 20, sometimes in my case, even more experience in a particular area. So Bloomberg, for example, is a very young company. I think the average age it feels like 12, but I think it's probably 25 to 30. But then we have a bunch of old people like myself. So when customers come in and they say, I'd like to go deep into, say, equity derivatives or something of that nature, that's what my group provides. And right now I'm responsible for our corporate business and our commodities business. Previous to that, the previous decades, I have worked mostly for financial institutions, large financial institutions, trading currency derivatives, options on precious metals, interest rates, and mostly structuring. And we can talk more about that offline, but it's like structuring financial instruments. Some people say that's what caused the financial crisis of 2008, but I won't take full credit for that. In addition, I teach at CUNY, Futures and Options course, and I'm involved in a number of not-for-profit boards and teams, mostly of the Hellenic and Orthodox institutions, but I contribute whatever I can in those areas. But I gotta, Konstantinos, you'll forgive me, Chris had a very inspiring opening, and I realized that I think I need to amend how I tell you about myself. At the heart of my story, as you say, I'm a Greek immigrant, right? And the most beautiful experience of my life has been sharing unabashedly my Greekness with my American, especially my non-Greek friends and colleagues. And if you ask anybody over the years, how am I defined? They'll first say, oh yeah, that Greek guy, if they don't remember my name or anything else. And it has been, not the spanakopita and all the other things that we do, but I share unabashedly our Hellenic, what I perceive our Hellenic ethos of social responsibility, love for knowledge and education. And if I had to name one thing that has fueled whatever modicum of success I've had, that's it. So anyway, I encourage all young people to share unabashedly. Don't be embarrassed by it. Take the finest things of what we have and share those. That was a bit longer, I would imagine. Sorry.
No, but that was wonderful. Thank you very, very much for all your sharing and what's said for the Greek mentality. And last but not least, Mr. Pyrovolakis.
Sure, Konstantinos, thank you. I might be the least interesting of the speakers because
unlikely.
Well, this is a repeat, I know, but yeah, I'll also go back to something that Christine said about being Greek being a gift, and I like that a lot. And it's a gift that has grounded me, and now as a father of two spectacular young children, both of whom Christine knows, it's a gift that I've been very dedicated to passing along to my children. So anyway, my background, I'm a Greek American. And right now, my whole career has really been around innovation. But I started on an academic track, studying primarily mathematical logic at MIT, and entered an entrepreneurship competition in 1996 that was started by another Greek, Dr. George Chatsopoulos, who was dean of the engineering school at MIT and one of the very early pioneers in academic-oriented innovation. He was dean at MIT and started a little company called Thermoelectron, which went public and created great wealth for him and his family. When the book is written finally on the origins of the new innovation revolution in this country, Dr. Chatsopoulos should be mentioned very prominently in that, and I've taken some initiative around trying to raise awareness around the role that he played. MIT started a lot of this, and he started it at MIT. But anyway, and he took a meeting with me when I was a 25-year-old graduate student with an idea on the back of an envelope. Anyway, since then, I started a company at the MIT Entrepreneurship, and I sold it to Thomson Reuters. I started another company after that with my own money that failed. I started a third company that succeeded, sold it to a PE-backed company, worked as an M&A banker briefly to try to understand how bankers come in at the end of all these deals and make all the money without doing very much. And that was interesting. And then I got very heavily onto not just the entrepreneurship track, but how innovation, in particular deep tech innovation, is a driver of global economic and security leadership. In some of my work with the federal government, where I saw systematic cherry picking of, I would say, its significance or fundamental innovation, even if it's not innovation that would be interesting in Silicon Valley, systematic cherry picking of it by the Chinese, and it's happening right under the federal government's nose. And I observed this with running a public-private partnership with the National Science Foundation. So I went from that and met some wealthy Midwesterners a couple of years back that liked what I was doing in terms of deep tech and focusing on innovation that's significant, not just by Silicon Valley standards, but by the measure of its defense tech and sort of things like that, things that are important for the future. And had the good fortune of having some significant people give me a little money to manage, and trying to grow from a first-time manager to a later-stage manager. And my current focuses, as Konstantinos pointed out, are fintech, but very sort of advanced fintech. So I'm not interested in. I'm more interested in things like how to apply chips, reprogrammable chips, or heterogeneous computing techniques to financial services. So that would be, I think, something along the lines of what Mr. Papacostas is involved with. So electronic trading, high frequency trading. But my bigger focus right now is cybersecurity, and in particular, very, very low in the stack cybersecurity. Not antivirus or anti-malware stuff. The last thing I'll say in this prolonged speech about myself that should have been shorter is that I do work with universities to help them get innovation out of their labs, including Christine's home of Columbia University, but Academic Venture Exchange is an initiative of foundation that I started, and we have 33 of the top 40 R&D universities in the country participating, and our board includes Columbia, Yale, Stanford, and WashU. And I'm extremely proud of being Greek, and when I'm not doing those other things, I either assistant coach or coach at the basketball team that we started at the Cathedral just a couple of years ago. And Christine, I'm grateful for the invite.
That's great. Thank you very much. Mr. Pyrovolakis, you said you were working with universities, and today we have many students from various university communities. So I want to ask you, if you could go back as a student, what advice would you say to yourself? And then the rest of the speakers can follow.
Well, one bit of advice I would give, two bits of advice, and they're slightly conflicting, is it's a lot easier to be great at something if you love it. And I would emphasize finding something that you're excited about, something that you love, over trying to find a practical thing to study that will afford you a career quickly, because those things change. But it's funny how you will be talented and gifted and intelligent and all this kind of stuff if you're doing stuff you like. And being the son of Greek immigrants, I felt a lot of pressure when I was younger to do something very practical that I didn't like. That was to become a lawyer. And my plan was, I'm going to study what I want to study because I can become a lawyer regardless of what my degrees are in. And I went down a very unusual academic path. I did, 3 majors in math, computer science, and philosophy. and I kind of just studied whatever I wanted. And I think that ended up being one of the best things I ever did. You know, it helped me be good at something, whether or not I'm talented. So I think it's cliche, but I think finding something that you're passionate about and excited about is probably, I would say, at the top of the list. It's certainly something I tell my children. The flip side, I will say, you're not educated in this day and age if you can't program. You have to know a computer programming language. I don't, you know, it's something I grapple with even with my children that are learning things like earth science, or they're learning about ancient civilizations, which is all well and good. But if you don't know how to program in this day and age, it's ignorance, and it makes you less relevant in the workplace. So practical advice, but and then more macro advice.
Yeah, that's great. And now, I remember you said like that all of us know how to do Python at least as a first step, right?
Well, and since then, my 14-year-old Odisea has learned Python, but yeah.
Great, thank you very much. Lydia, what about you?
I think I definitely agree with what Mr. Pyrovolakis just said. So start from with finding what you love, because that's a prerequisite for you to be happy with what you do. So I definitely agree with that. But then I guess I would just give some practical advice, which is something I believe that most parents or older people have always given younger people. And that would be to try to apply what you learn as soon as possible. So even when you're at school. And I'm saying that because I know that we have some students in the audience. So I think that's kind of a useful piece of advice. And I do think this is especially relevant nowadays when we discuss technology, because obviously technology evolves daily, it changes. So, and the law, obviously as a lawyer, we see that the law tries to catch up with new developments. So I think it's important to just try to apply everything even while you're still at school. And there are many opportunities to do so. There are internships, pro bono work, there's access to monitoring, there's so much stuff students can take advantage of nowadays, whether they're in school, in law school, or they're still studying. I think that's something I would advise myself if I could go back.
I really agree. In this point, I just want to say that if any from the audience have any question, feel free to type it in the chat and we'll have time to answer it afterwards. I already have a question for Lydia to answer afterwards if she wants that. When should you look like for this type of opportunities while you're a student? But let's proceed with Mr. Papacostas, and if he could go back as a student, what he would suggest we study.
First of all, both of the previous speakers gave wonderful advice. If I could go back as a student, the first thing I would do is play less foosball, podosferakια. That was a big problem because they had a foosball table at the school bar in NYU, and I got to be very good at it. And that's the one thing I would do less of if I could. And I want to take a slightly, hopefully add to what the previous two commentators said, but a slightly different approach. Yes, if you can find a passion and you want to be an attorney, you like to be like my children, for example, one of my children, she wanted to be a performer from the age of 5, and that's what she wanted to do. In talking to a lot of young people today, I find the other problem. It's a very heavy burden for people to be told, literally, you have the world is your oyster. We are, as a community, generally well off. You can go to any school you want. You can be anything you want. Find something that you're passionate about. Well, I don't know how you develop passion. It's a little bit like changing your feelings. I don't know how you do that. You feel what you feel. You have a passion for what you have a passion of. And so most of the people I can't find what I'm passionate about. And so I guess what I would suggest is don't stress over it. Kind of what Mr. Vradi said, reduce the stress about, I've got to find what I'm good at and I've got to get on top of it. Relax a little bit into knowledge. Try different things. Take different courses. I think Dr. Vradi said, like 2-3 degrees. Take 2-3 degrees. your 20s are an amazing time for that kind of an experience. And I think, and I believe this, that as you let your soul and your activities and everything sort of flow, you will find a neb, you will find a periyali, you will find a little cove that is you, whether you like to be, or a person that's very ambitious, or a person that likes the arts. So experiment and take it easy on yourself in terms of finding what you're good at, and then working 24 hours a day at this age. A little bit unconventional, but I don't know. That's what I think I've finally got to. And I wasn't like that. I was exactly like Dr. Like you said. I felt I had to get a job. I got to work for a bank. I got to do this. I've got, I am the immigrant. I'm not even, I'm first generation. So I know exactly how it, sort of that stress of becoming a productive member of society as soon as possible is. It's not for everyone, and it's not always that easy.
I think it's great. And, as you mentioned, try to do different things, and also try to notice what things are make you happy, because the moment you're smiling is the easiest path, to find your actual passion. So something that I really enjoyed, and I was smiling, it was speaking with the three of you before this event, and what is overlooked in your work and in your sector. So let's start with you this time, Mr. Papacostas, that what is the one thing that people do not notice and do not think and cannot guess about your work you're doing?
I don't know if they can't guess it. I think if you surveyed, the literally, because I work in the trading floor, right, most of my career. So we had open environment. So I've probably been close to people in physical sense, thousands of people over my career, literally thousands of people. So I think they would notice this, the fact that all the people I tried to mentor and assist anyone I could all around me. But the one thing that I think was at the heart of it all is the belief truly within me that if the people that reported to me in my groups and the people I led succeeded, I succeeded. I have gone out of my way to promote even the slightest thing someone did that was in my group as their work. And that activity, number one, engenders not just loyalty. Loyalty is not really necessarily important, but it engenders a sense of self in others. Because if your boss is thinking you're doing a good job, and it's not fake, it's substantive, and they promote you to others, up, down, all around, it creates an esprit de corps that is unbeatable. So the one thing I would say is promote those around you that you have the capacity to do as much as you can, and not diminish yourself, but you don't need to be in the spotlight. It's a little bit like money, time, and especially love. The more you give, the more you get, all the time, no questions asked.
Right, so not only numbers, but people as well. Thank
Absolutely, people.
Lydia, what about you?
So I'm going to talk about something from my practice, I think, which is overlooked by clients. And it's also relevant to our discussion, since it has to do with technology as well. So I've noticed that most of the clients I work with are generally aware by now of the importance of intellectual property, and they actually do prioritize investments in such. So that's a very positive sign. And also it's not something new. People are obviously aware of the value of IP, whether that's a patent, trademarks, copyrights, whatever that is for companies. So that's starting place. But I guess what I see is that many still overlook the importance of just monitoring, enforcing and policing their intellectual property, which is something we see daily with the work we're doing, and it's very crucial, because the failure to do so might mean that you might not necessarily lose, but have trouble enforcing your rights. And if we're talking about investments in IP, I think it's very important to also invest in just following through and protecting your IP as well. So to put it simply, you hire a lawyer, you register your mark, you get your patent, and then you let it go, and you don't follow through. You forget about it, and then you might find out that this is also in use by some third party, or it's being infringed upon. And if that has gone on for a period of time, then it might be difficult to get back your rights or to enforce them adequately or sufficiently. So I guess what we're trying to do a lot in my work is to, we advise clients to not only acquire their IP, but also enforce it to avoid dilution, which is which happens when whether a mark or a copyright or a patent it's used and the owner does not take steps to enforce it, and then especially in the trademark practice, that's what we call trademark dilution. That means essentially damage to the brand. It's something more than mere infringement. It's damage to the brand. And that can be through two different avenues. It can be either through placing of the mark on items of inferior quality compared to the ones of the trademark owner, which creates a direct association of the owner with inferior goods. So that's a direct damage to the brand. Or even just use of the mark by many third parties, which also results in diminishing the distinctiveness of the mark. So these are some issues specific to the trademark practice, but also IP practice, which I think are still kind of overlooked by many clients and many startup owners that we work with. So that's a piece of advice, I guess, for everyone to just not stop at register and acquiring your rights, but also follow through and consult with an attorney and make sure you monitor and you know what's happening with your rights.
Super useful. Thank you very much, and I have to do that as well. But what about you, Mr. Pyrovolakis?
Okay, well, before I answer that question, I just want to go back to something Mr. Papacostas said before about don't stress about you have to get a job and all this kind of thing, because that's an extremely I want to second that proposition emphatically, especially in this day and age. I think this is very important. This is a significant difference between now and when I was a young professional, is that the cost and the level of effort required to get an elite pedigree has gotten, in my view, completely out of control. It's completely out of control if it costs $250,000 to get an elite degree, and what you get out of that is the opportunity to work for $70,000 or $80,000. In the past, it may have been a viable strategy to say, let me decorate myself with an elite pedigree and things will work out. I don't think you can assume that anymore. I see, as a father, I see that pressures on my children to perform on some completely asinine tests that measure nothing whatsoever, and in my view, actually diminish intellectual curiosity. They diminish the ability to think independently. They want to turn us into, a second-rate version of China. I'm very much against that, and I think it's a disservice that the education industry is doing to young people in this generation. And it just goes back to being emphatic about what you care about, what you're excited about, even with the provisos appended by Mr. Papacostas about it's not necessarily easy to know. But if you find something that you love and you're great at it, the pedigree will come. But I don't think you can assume the pedigree will bring you to the promised land as maybe it once did. Now, in terms of more, as it pertains to the specific question Konstantinos asked, I would say there's two things. One is, I would say, you want to surround yourself with exceptional people. And exceptional doesn't just mean they're really, really smart or really, really capable. In fact, sometimes really, really smart, really capable people are horrible teammates. But you want to surround yourself with people that are exceptionally smart and so forth if you can, but also people that are high character that you can work with, that you can go through hard times with. And that's very important in startup culture, which has become a really big thing these days. Startups generally fail because of, early stage startups generally fail because of interpersonal issues on the management team, on the founding team. So I forgot there was Kleiner Perkins a few years back had that statistic where they had a whole bunch of companies that had received seed rounds, and they said, when we have this event next year, half of you will be with a different startup. If you want to be in the startup space as I am, you really, really want to surround yourself with people you can trust. I would almost say that the genius factor is a commodity. You know, and to Mrs. Vradi's point, you know, IP is great, but if you don't have people around it to make something with it, it'll sit on the shelf, generally speaking. And the best case use for it would be if someone files a lawsuit and sues someone else over infringement, which, in my view, is actually an impediment to innovation, not a driver of it. The second point I'd make is really a macro trend in the innovation space, which is that I think I don't want to say that the days of, you know, 3 kids in the garage kind of thing are gone, but it's changed. It used to be, and this was the case with me, that, you know, if you get a couple of your friends together and you get a couple of $100,000, you could go to market. You know, for example, that was true in the, I mean, the .com days are viewed as a time of just excess and stupidity and so forth. But the other part of the story is that the reason that a couple of kids in a garage could go out and compete is because you had an entire industry built on pre-internet technologies, and you could come out at 25, 26 years old, or 18 years old, or 40 years old, I guess, and learn that stuff, and you're on par with a CTO at a large corporation. When my partner and I went to sell our company to Thomson Reuters, I mean, I was 26, Gary was 24. We were going head to head with the senior management of the technology group at Thomson Reuters, you know, a multinational conglomerate. And Gary and I knew within 5 minutes that we were light years ahead of the guys sitting across the table from us. So those are genuine windows to create startup value and startup wealth. One of the changes now, I think, is that if you look at, you know, a typical seed round now is, you know, 5 million, 8 million. I mean, that used to be an A round or a B round. So the price of entry into the space has gotten significantly higher, and the space has become kind of an institutional grade asset class. So, you know, and I think that's bad in a lot of ways. It's bad in the sense that it makes it harder for people to enter the space, but it's also bad for innovation because you have silly things becoming, you know, Silicon Valley sort of idols, and so this is the age of the unicorn. So I think the unicorn bubble will burst and things will go back to normal. Anyway, I think those are just things to be aware of if you're a young person looking to get into that space.
Oh, many notes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, and before we wrap up, I think Chris has done a great job to bring people from, you know, the first line of innovation. So I want you in one sentence to tell us what's the one thing from your industry that's really like a trend right now, and the audience should Google search online after the event. So what's the one thing that you really need to focus and check?
I want to start by saying that it's not really a new trend, but there are actually many trends I could speak of that have a connection between innovation, business, and the law, obviously. But what is really relevant nowadays, I think, is retail technology, namely e-commerce, which we've seen that that's not a new thing, but it's been going on for a while, but it keeps evolving. And I think it's particularly relevant nowadays in the current pandemic, because we see that more and more people have turned to online shop to satisfy their needs. So this has many legal implications, and particularly in connection with intellectual property and the protection of such. So I just want to give an example. I came across a new app, or it was a website actually, that offered customers the opportunity to try to book a virtual appointment and just try out a product via a live Zoom call before purchasing it, and also have access to someone to ask questions regarding the product. So I thought that was very smart and innovative. I'm not sure if it has been done before. It was the first time I saw it, so I thought that was something something showing where we're going in terms of shopping and technology in the future. So at the same time, I would say that all this innovation and all these steps have created many impediments as to the enforcement of IP in that environment, obviously, because the marketplace is now huge, it's enormous, so you cannot really effectively monitor what you need to monitor and enforce your IP if it's out there. But at the same time, the positive thing that technology also offers is that it gives us all the tools we need. If not all, it gives us many tools to just fight against that. So we have Google Alerts, we have search engines, we have software, we have companies offering software that that lets you scout and monitor the whole web to give you what you want, to give you an answer on what you want, whether you're concerned that your mark is infringed upon, whether you're searching about a patent, the availability of a patent, or an idea. We have access to all of that nowadays, so I think that's the middle ground. That's a positive note, I guess. So I'd like to leave it at that.
Great, thank you, Lydia. What about you, Mr. Pyrovolakis, in one sentence, what they have to look after the event?
Oh, sorry, in one sentence, I didn't hear what you said after that.
Yeah, what the audience should look after the event was like the trend in the sector that they should look after the event. I know you already said programming, but what else? One more thing.
Increase barriers to entry to startup for young, unfunded people. That's my one sentence.
Great. And what about you, Mr. Papacostas?
Okay, Konstantinos, one sentence, really, from a Greek. I just, okay, I'll try to condense it because it's very, it's an extension of Dr. Pyrovolakis said before. Yes, you should explore, but without question, you absolutely need to be able to read, write, arithmetic, and programming. You absolutely need to do that because we have data coming out of every pore of this human existence right now. And it's not just data in the conventional sense, it's data we haven't even thought of as data before, alternative data and so on. And what's happening is we have reached, I believe anyway, we have reached the capacity of our human mind to digest and analyze this. And the only way we can do it now is by using programming and AI, obviously, in more complex situations. I'll give you a quick example, Konstantinos, if you forgive me, from my company, right? So Bloomberg is, if those of you that know it, we had this whole concept of a function. What that is we'll take all this data. I'll take all of this. I'll take the data from economists and the options market and volatilities and this, and I'm going to give you a nice screen that digests it for you. Well, now our customers are all saying, thank you very much. I don't want your view of how it goes. It's not, first of all, I can't compete if everybody has the same thing. Give me the access to the API. Give me trillions upon trillions upon trillions upon trillions points of data. And then I'm going to get a young programmer and tell them how I want to digest it and how I'm going to look for patterns and how I'm going to figure out that secret sauce. So a little bit more than a sentence, but programming is as critical as you learning how to read, period.
Great. Thank you very much. So thank you very much, the three of you. To all the panel, try different things, find things you love, use the tools of technology, and don't forget your relations with the people. Thank you very much, and Chris, the stage is yours.